we spoke about this new charge of motor manslaughter, and we did a short clip on it, and it has been viewed thousands and thousands of times, and people have been making comments, and I felt it important enough to make certain points again. So for the benefit of the police, for the benefit, so you have to take out your notebook. If you don't have your notebook now, you could always go back to YouTube later and listen to what I am saying. And let me read it again. Let me read the law. Where it is? Hold on. I got it someplace here. I got so many things around. I want to read the particular amendment. I had it just now. One minute. Let me get 1 minute. 1 minute. Let me tell you what it says without even going to it directly. The amendment to the Motor Vehicle Act creates this offense of motor manslaughter. And basically it says if anyone is found, if you kill somebody while driving a motor vehicle, and it is found that at the time you were under the influence of drugs, or they said drinks or drug, which is alcohol or thing, you get charged for motor manslaughter. We made the point then that it is very critical that when there's an accident, that test is properly done. You know, somebody come on for the thing and say, but we should talk about the accident with Gary Best and all. That is precisely what we're talking about. Because we're saying, even not addressing the specific case, but we're saying that if you're going to charge somebody for driving under the influence of alcohol, then you have to make sure that the system, the test, the breathalyzer test is properly done. I made reference to a standing order that I did, which is there. I don't know if they've pulled it up, to deal with how you administer the breathalyzer test. And I want to make this point here now, and this is what I want you to make note, that if you're going to charge a person with motor manslaughter, you cannot rely on the breathalyzer test where a man blows into this breathalyzer instrument alone. That's not going to work. You have to get blood test. Because remember, when you blow, you're talking about alcohol alone, but the law provides for alcohol and drugs. I don't know that the breathalyzer test reads the amount of drugs in a person's system. So you have to have the protocols established that once a person is involved in a fatal accident, breathalyze him, and well, not even when you breathalyze, you have to also get a blood test. And when you breathalyze, hear this. When you breathalyze, you have to, if the person is above the legal limit, you have to make sure that you have proper records. When you go into the court, the police have to be taught how to give the evidence. You have to give the evidence in respect to the particular machine, breathalyzer machine, being calibrated. It can't be a generalized thing. It has to be the particular machine by serial number, that this thing was calibrated so that you're trying to convince the court that it is accurate and the measurement it provided at that time is accurate. You have to get to the stage where you have to, who calibrates it? The police can't go in the witness box and say that the thing was calibrated because the police did not calibrate it. The person who did the calibration, person or persons from the agencies, the agency that does it, because the police don't do it. You have to carry to some agency. They are the ones who will have to give the evidence in court. First of all, I suspect they have to be deemed by the court as being qualified to give the evidence. You might need to have a certificate to tender to say that this particular breathalyzer machine by serial number was calibrated when to convince the court that this machine is working properly. And I said before, I'm saying again, I don't think there's been a case where a person is charged with DUI, driving under the influence, and they pleaded not guilty, that the police have been able to successfully prosecute. If any at all, perhaps very few. And that is why people walk free, because they don't know to give the evidence. You have to give the evidence about the calibration. And if you did not calibrate it, you can't give that evidence. That is not how the courts work. The person who did the calibration has to go into the witness box, be deemed an expert. You may have to have a certificate to say that that thing was calibrated, and then that is tendered and all of that. Now, if it, on the other hand, the person gets involved in an accident, you did the breathalyzer and they are below the limit, the question was asked, then what you do? Then I suspect you got to charge for the normal causing death by dangerous driving. You cannot charge for motor manslaughter because the law says in order for you to charge a motor manslaughter, the person has to have been over the limit to such an extent as to be incapable of having proper control of a vehicle. These things require training. These things require training. They require a proper SOP, and the ranks have to be properly trained. And I said on the last occasion, if you are going to move to institute charge of motor manslaughter, which is a crime, you have to get ranks from the CID to investigate. They are the ones who are trained to take caution statements and all of that. I cannot see, and you should not continue to have traffic policemen investigating these matters, especially if you're going to charge for motor manslaughter. And yes, Davy saying is the National Bureau of Standard does the calibration. Thank you very much. Tell you have brilliant students. And therefore, somebody from the National Bureau of Standard has to come. I am sure that is, and of course, you have a lot of lawyers amongst you. You have the DPP. You have a lot of legal people around. I'm sure that they are going to tell you the same thing. That the policeman who administered the breathalyzer test is not the one who has to go and give evidence about the calibration. He did not calibrate. So no court is going to accept the evidence from that person. The person who did the calibration has to go into the box. And if you're going to the witness box to give the evidence, you're not going to be allowed to give evidence because there is basically, in my estimation, export evidence. So the court has to deem you an expert before you are allowed to give the evidence about the calibration and so on. That is what you people need to get done. Let me bring in Mr. Conway to comment on that. CC, your views on the comments I made a while ago.
Yeah, and let me read. I have before me the Act number 17 of 2022, which the President signed on the 15th of November 2022. And they're not going to say that it's Parslow or Conway. Section 335A, referring to 35A. 1. Any person who causes the death of another person by driving of motor vehicle on the road or other public place while under the influence of drink or drug to such an extent as to be incapable of having proper control of the vehicle shall be guilty of motor manslaughter and shall be liable to, on conviction, on indictment, to a term of imprisonment of not less than 10 years. Some points to note is that on a road or public place, on a road or public place, and as you rightly mentioned, under the influence of drink or drug. And there are certain evidence that you have to give, certain ingredients which are important to this thing. And even the person who administer it has got to state that he was approved by the minister and it was published in the official gazette. And normally you mention the official gazette number 26 or whatever of 2001 or 2000 whatever it is 22, and you quote the official gazette, and the magistrate or judge will take judicial notice of that. So there's a whole lot of things that you got to go and prove. And as you rightly mentioned, I can't recall hearing a man pleads not guilty for driving under the influence and they went into a trial and he was convicted. I haven't heard and I've been following the cases. So the thing calls for a lot of, as you mentioned, Paul, a lot of export evidence and a lot of evidence where you have to comply with the law. And even the equipment that they're using, as you mentioned, it got to be approved by the minister too. I can remember 4 years ago when we started this thing, and especially with the radar gun, the Ghana National Bureau of Standard didn't have the equipment to calibrate anything, and we sent a limited amount to Trinidad. And they came back. But understand now they have the expertise and they have the equipment to things. So the thing is that we need to ensure that we have all the necessary evidence, the export and other evidence, if we want a successful case. Otherwise, it would go down the drain. Somebody mentioned about Gary Bestwell, and we knew what happened there, that they didn't couldn't give the evidence. The evidence was not there, so person's going to walk free.
Yeah, I have one of my colleague here asking on the program, is the machine kept in an air conditioned office and restricted to the operators only? But all of these are issues that they have to understand, because when you go before the court, the lawyers are going to ask you all these questions. How is the machine kept? What type of training the person has? All of that. All of that. So you have to cover your bases. You have to cover your bases. And you're going to do so by making sure, first of all, you put together a proper standing operation procedure and make sure that the ranks are trained. And the point is made, I made it before, that the law provides for a breath test or a breath analysis. That is the amendment to the Motor Vehicle Act that we refer to. Since 2008, I think it was. I was in the force at the time. And the law says that any rank in uniform or anyone who identifies himself should be able to administer this breath test. The breath test, and I'm telling you, must go and check the difference in breath test. And they say you have to have reasonable cause to conduct the test. You have to have reasonable cause. That's what the law says. So it is my view that just stopping a man as a blow without satisfying that you have reasonable cause, you are treading in murky waters. You have to be able to give the evidence of the reasonable cause. And you know, all of this is in the standing, the SOP that I wrote. What is reasonable cause? How do you prove reasonable cause? It is there. It is there. How you keep reasonable cause. And so therefore, and I said the breath test is what is generally administered on the road. Tell them how blow. You get reasonable cause, or you tell him to blow into the machine reads above the limit. All right. And as I say here, how do you then secure the reading from the machine? What happens? Is it a printout? How do you secure? What records are made at the station? All of these things are contained in this SOP that I wrote. That is the breath test, which is administered by any policeman in uniform. Now, there's also, the law also provides for a breath analysis, a breath or blood analysis, which is done at specific locations. And for the analysis to be conducted, the persons doing that have to be identified and have to be gazetted. There's a county gazette for licensing and certifying officers. Persons to administer the breath analysis have to be gazetted. And I don't know if they have the breath analysis machine. I don't know. But I'm saying again that if you are going to charge for motor manslaughter on the basis of the breath test alone, you are in serious trouble in terms of acquiring a conviction. So don't come, I mean, the Attorney General, the start enough, and he writing a lot of things, I suspect. Well, he should have, not I suspect, but he should have been into the forefront of this to tell them. The DPP should be in the forefront to tell the police what type of evidence. Because I have said before that in a court of law is not what you know or what you think you know or what you suspect you know. The court of law deals with evidence, is what type of evidence you can produce to prove the case. And if you can't produce the evidence to prove the case, the person is going to walk free. And then you're going to jump up, like the people say, that is political, and all other crap. They blame the magistrate, they blame the liar, they blame everybody. You got to blame the policemen and the hierarchy that did not ensure that the people are properly trained. That if you don't have, they talk about every time you see a release made about fatal accidents, the number of fatal accidents, they're going to tell you two things are the main factors: speeding and persons driving under the influence of alcohol. They don't normally say drugs, alcohol. Yeah, so if that is the case, you have to, especially driving under the influence of alcohol, you have to make sure that you get equipment. You have to make sure you have equipment to determine, because you can't just look at a man and say driving is over the limit. He has to be tested. he has to be tested. And what is the legal limit? They should know what is the legal limit. And again, teaching, it is a presumption of law that if you have this amount of alcohol in your system, that you're incapable of having proper control of the vehicle, presumption of law. And I learned many, many years ago when I did prosecution training and other training that you cannot rebut the presumption of law. If the law says that if you are over the limit, if you have, whatever I think is 35 micrograms in 100 milliliter of blood, something like that, you're presumed to be drunk. You can't go and say, well, I could drink more than that and nothing can happen. And normally they said perhaps there's the equivalent of 2 beers. You can't tell them in the court that I could drink a dozen beer and I good. No, the law presumes that you are incapable of having proper control of the vehicle once you have that reading, once you're over the limit. And these are the things that I say that must be taught. I see they're doing all type of training, or they're attempting to do in terms of traffic, something with the Ministry of Works and all of that. Good. But you have to focus on the areas that you have identified as being problematical. And you have said speeding and driving under the influence are perhaps the two major factors resulting in fatal accidents. So you have to deal with that. And I'm saying this to emphasize, because the policewoman who was killed, and I saw she was buried yesterday, and I don't know what is the evidence, because the man is charged with motor manslaughter, what evidence you're going to produce to convict this man for motor manslaughter. Because if you did not do a breath test or an analysis or a blood test at the time, you right away you started off on the wrong foot. Right away, some lawyer, you don't have to get any brilliant lawyer. Any lawyer can make mincemeat of the ranking court. So I hope that you're taking this, and the machine that was used, you make sure that you have the calibration records from the ministry, from the Bureau of Standard and all of that. Because it will be a real travesty if this man who knocked down this policewoman while she was on duty, killing her, walks free in a few months' time. Real travesty, despite all the noise that we make now. So yes, I am urging you to follow up on this and have it done. Let me bring in CC for his, if he wants to say anything further on this issue. CC, do you want to?
Yeah, let me just add to it, and let me add to it because talking about this is breath analysis, section 39C2 of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Chapter 5102. Here it says, the breath analysis referred to in subsection 1 shall be carried out by a constable authorized in that behalf by the minister. A. At or near the police station where the requirement is made, if facilities for the specimen to be taken are available, and it is practicable to conduct the analysis there or at a police station, as the constable may direct, for the purpose of breath, for the purpose of breath analysis. A person shall provide 2 separate specimens for breath analysis. B. Such specimens shall be provided in accordance with the direction of the constable referred to in subsection 2. C. There must be an interval of not less than 2 minutes and not more than 10 minutes between the provision of specimens. And D. The reading from the specimen that indicate the lower concentration of alcohol in the person's breath shall be taken to be the results of the breath analysis. And I think this is very instructive, and they should read the 5102 and follow the directions.
Well, having said that, CC, that all of that is included in the standing order that I wrote. I think I sent you a copy.
Yeah,
And I don't know,
I know that.
all of this
Yeah.
is included. So this
Yeah.
standing order that we sat down and put together is so comprehensive that if they were to follow it, they will cover all of these things.
Yeah.
All of these things, and I'm saying again that if you have identified driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs as being one of the major contributory factors to fatal accidents, you have to make sure that these things are being done. Because you jump up and see that we made a release yesterday or sometime about how many cases are made. And again, I make the point. It's good to say that you made all these many cases, including cases of driving under the influence of alcohol. What successful prosecution percentage you have? They talk about tickets. You're writing tickets. How many persons are paying those tickets? Have you done an analysis to see, since you're doing all of this, whether